All right. Hello, hello, hello. Happy Saturday afternoon. It's 1:15 p.m. where I am. It's a beautiful Saturday. It's a beautiful day to be alive. We are going to be watching and reacting to a Sam Harris video where he's talking about meditation. And we're going to watch a Dr. Jordan Peterson video where he's answering a question from someone in the crowd and from one of his lectures where he talks about hope and suicidal ideation and things of that nature. So we're going to be reacting to those two videos today, Sam Harris on meditation and Dr. Jordan Peterson on a message of hope, which totally fits in line with everything that I talk about. So if you're new to my channel, new to my stream, my name is Aaron Mashbitz. I host a podcast called Something for Everybody, where we do 85% of our episodes around mindset, mental health, and personal development. And then I own and operate a mental health nonprofit called You Are Loved. So definitely check that out. I'm going to pour myself some coffee here first before we jump into the videos. So I encourage you to do the same. Cheers. Happy Saturday. God bless. There's the coffee. We're ready to fucking rock and roll. And we are ready to see what Dr. Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris have to tell us today about hopefully how to live our better lives. I haven't seen either of these videos, so I'm reacting to them sort of in a live way, but I'm also doing it because I want to learn. And this is the best way for me to sort of watch the videos uninterrupted. So hopefully we can do that together. So let me share my screen and we'll get rocking and rolling.
I'm a bit of a meditation skeptic. In that I've never actually meditated. I've never done it. I've never tried it. It feels to me a bit like when somebody says to me, "Have you ever tried praying?" And I think to myself, sure, I'm not like anti praying. I just feel like I could sit down, I could put my hands together, and I could, say words to the sky. But I feel like unless I already have some credence in this actually being something, I'm literally unable to pray.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe in the necessary, prerequisite assumptions that one needs to have to make it an actual prayer. And I suppose I feel similarly about meditation. Like it's not something that I've ever.
But it's different because it's not assuming the existence of something that you are disposed to doubt, right? So with prayer, you doubt that there's an invisible God that you could be addressing through any kind of propitiatory prayer. So and that's why I'm saying I don't make this move into metaphysics where I say that because I can experience my conscious mind free of a sense of self, that means consciousness is the substratum in which everything is arising, including this universe, and I'm experiencing the thing that preceded the Big Bang. I mean, there are people like Deepak Chopra will say things like that as a result of having an experience in meditation, and that's totally unwarranted, right? I mean, it's just not scientific. I mean, you can't even know that you have a brain by meditating. like paying close attention to your experience doesn't tell you anything about your brain, even that it exists, right? Which is a pretty big lacuna in your self understanding. So meditation is good for some insights, but it's not good for making contact with what I'm calling the metaphysics or even the physics of things. So you're right to doubt.
When I listen to Sam Harris talk about meditation, it's really refreshing. I mean, the guy has a meditation app called Waking Up. So you would assume that he would say everything under the sun about how meditation can do this and that and all this type of stuff. But he's just so realistic and he's so honest about his interpretation about meditation and what it can do for you and how normal everyday people, whether you believe in a higher power or not, can sit down and meditate. And meditation can be very challenging because the idea of meditation, for those that are unfamiliar, have never tried it or are skeptical about it, the idea of meditation is that you're sitting down with oneself, hoping to connect deeper with being in the present moment. Now, thoughts are going to come and go. They're going to travel around. You can think of them like a snow globe, and hopefully they just trickle down all the way to the bottom. But there's hopefully this sort of non-judgmental appreciation of the present moment is really what meditation is about. And, I've talked a lot about habits and goals in some of my recent podcast episodes. And just like meditation, if you want to start a meditation practice, the best thing you can possibly do is make that habit too small to fail. And so you can also make it an algorithm. If this, then what? I want to start meditating more. Okay, by the end of the year, I want to be able to meditate 3 times a week for 15 minutes at a time. Great. First step in that is making it too small to fail and saying, every time I walk through a door, I'm going to take a deep breath. If I walk through a door, then I take a deep breath. If I go to the bathroom, then I take a deep breath. If I stand up from my chair, then I take a deep breath. So you're just rotating more and more conscious awareness and deep breaths into your life. So when you do sit down for a 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute, 6 minute, 7 minute period, it becomes more natural because you know how to utilize your breath. You know what it means to sit in the present moment, to have sort of harsh thoughts come in and try to let them go and be non-judgmental about being exactly where your feet are. And so that's sort of the practical application of thinking about meditation. And I love how, I mean, Sam Harris can get very wordy at times if you listen to his podcast, but he becomes very succinct and practical about the ideas of meditation, which I find, very charming. Here we go.
Prayer on that basis, but it's just not an analogy, because the meditation I would recommend you do is just pay attention to your experience. Like, very much in the spirit of scientific hypothesis, which is, if you want to understand better what it's like to be you, it would make sense to pay attention.
Mm.
So what does that mean? What would it mean to pay attention?
Yeah, how does that actually work, and what constitutes meditation in this respect?
So then you'd be given in the beginning, you'd be given a very remedial device, which in the usual case of training in mindfulness, you would just be given the breath, right? Just pay attention to the breath and just notice. And there's nothing, it's not because there's something magical or profound about the breath. It's just,
I'm not sure who coined this definition of mindfulness, but as I've come to know it, mindfulness is a non-judgmental way of being in the present moment. And I don't think mindfulness and meditation are sort of synonyms, but I do think they're in the same sort of ballpark. But mindfulness is the non-judgmental way of being in the present moment. And a pathway to that mindfulness is utilizing your breath. We talk about this in sports all the time with the athletes that I work with. If you want to get back in the present moment, if you want to respond to a mistake or an error or a setback, the best way to get back into the next moment so you can focus on the next play, which is most important, is utilizing the breath, right? It's in deeply into the nose, deep into the belly, holding it at the top, and then pushing everything out through the mouth. I mean, there's a little bit more to it, and we want to be a little bit more deliberate and intentional. But just as a sort of an example, that's where it can be practically applied. And so, for anyone in their life, we make mistakes all the time. We have setbacks and challenges all the time. We respond adversely all the time. So, might as well utilize the breath so maybe we can respond better. We can optimize our response through being able to slow down, pause, and then respond, not just react.
this is a very easy object to notice. You can notice it just as the feeling of, the rising and falling of your abdomen or chest, or the sensation of air passing through the nostrils. And people tend to start out doing this with closed eyes. And you pay attention to that. And the reason why it's a good object is, one, you don't have to presuppose any religious nonsense in order to do it. You don't have to.
Sure.
I don't have to give you a Sanskrit mantra and tell you about its significance,
Yeah.
right? It's just the breath. You're just paying attention to that, and what you'll notice eventually, this could take 5 seconds, or it could take 5 days on a silent retreat where you're just trying to do this for, to the exclusion of everything else for 12 hours a day. I mean, some people are harder cases than others, but what you will eventually notice is that that's actually much harder to do than you were expecting, right? So you pay attention to the breath, and you feel the movement and tension and pressure and tingling and whatever you.
I mean, obviously, when it comes to anything personal development, self help, mental health related, all of the tools seem so simple, right? Eat well, move well, sleep well, think well. That's the foundation, that's the basics. And if we're talking about thinking well, it branches off into meditation, and you tell someone, okay, just, yeah, sit there for 5 minutes and only focus on your breath. No, that's easy. Why would I do that? How's it going to help me at all? Well, there's so many different practical applications of it, but to actually just sit down and do it and give yourself actually enough time to meditate, to just be, to see what thoughts travel in and out, to see where there's tension in your body, see how you can actually utilize your breath right? And there's then how do you apply that into your everyday life? Or maybe I'm a brand new dad, right? My son's almost 4 months old. And so maybe I get home from work, I'm in my driveway or in my garage, and I've had a really hectic day at work. Like crazy stuff happened at work, very busy, a lot of calls, boss yelled at me, just shit hit the fan. And I know when I walk in my house, my 1, 2, 3 kids or my wife are going to need my attention and time. Okay, well, I can't walk in frustrated and flustered because the moment I walk in, I'm going to step on some Legos. My wife is going to tell me to do something that I didn't do this earlier, or whatever the case may be. My kids are going to hug me, or they want me, or they want to play. Okay, so how can I walk into the house as present as humanly possible? Well, I've diligently practice this meditation routine over time in sort of calmer environments, then I utilize it right now in my car for 30 seconds, for a minute, for 2 minutes. And I always let my wife know, hey, I'm going to get in the driveway. I'm going to need 30 seconds to 2 minutes. I'm getting my mind right. So when I walk in, I'm in dad mode, I'm in love mode, because I'm in work mode. I need a transition. And so there's where the breaths, the meditation, the mindfulness become really super practical, because you're using it right there for 2 minutes because you've practiced it elsewhere. You've learned the reps, you've had the time under tension. Now, when you walk into the house, your day at work is forgotten because you've left it there, and you've walked into the house, switched on to love mode, dad mode, whatever it is, because you were able to utilize your breath and walk in. Say you do step on Legos, fuck it, you're happy to be there. Your kids come up, they want you to play. The laundry needs to be done, the dishes need to be taken out, whatever it is, right? So many stuff might happen in your household. I don't know what it is, but you get sort of the application of here to there to, yes, I'm going to sit with myself for 6, 7, 8 minutes, meditate, breathe, feel my body, understand my breath, the sensations, the thoughts, non-judgment, being in the present moment. Okay, then I can apply it in this moment to this moment. And so that's at least how I think about it. I don't know how Sam Harris thinks about the practical application of it, and maybe he's going to dive more into it in this exact conversation or clip from this conversation. But here we go.
Feel with the rising of each inhalation and the falling of each exhalation. And then the next second, you're thinking about something, and you've completely forgotten the project of you. You forgot you were in a room trying to meditate. You forgot this is something you even wanted to do. You're just talking to yourself,
Right.
helplessly, and it's very much analogous to being asleep and dreaming and not knowing that you're dreaming. It's like a daydream where you've actually lost contact with who you are and what you're about in that moment, and you have had no reality testing riding alongside it. So it's like all of a sudden you're having an argument with someone who's not there, right? You're rehearsing the conversation you had with your girlfriend the day before, or the thing you're expecting to happen later today, and literally there's a voice in your head that is your own voice, and it feels like you, it feels like yourself, right? And you're thinking, yeah, why did she say that? I mean, doesn't this is, I told her that, and you're in the middle, you're in medias res with a conversation that you've had with yourself probably 15 times in the last 24 hours, and it's striking you as new every time you have it. You're not impatient with yourself, you're not bored. If you were having that same conversation with anyone else, they'd be bored to tears, but you have this endless appetite to just hear the next thing that comes over the transom that's in your voice, in your mind, saying, yeah, what would she think? Okay, when all right, the first thing I'm gonna say to her is, and you're the thing to realize here is that this is psychotic on 2 levels. One is it presupposes a kind of conversational structure that you're having with yourself that makes no sense, because if you're the one to think the thought, why, and also the one to hear the thought, why did you need to think it in the first place? You know what you're thinking, right? You're thinking it to yourself as though you're both speaker and audience, right? That split is bizarre. But 2, it comes over you, and you're helplessly carried away by it, and you have no perspective on the fact that you're carried away by it, in the same way you have no perspective when you go to sleep at night and you fall asleep and you start dreaming. It's astonishing that the first minute of every dream doesn't start with, "What the fuck is happening? How did I get here? I was just in my bed, and now I'm like, how what's this is impossible," right?
Yeah.
You have no reality testing, and the same thing is happening every time you think a thought, for the most part. So then now back to the breath, right? Now, okay, so you recognize you're thinking, and you think, "Oh, fuck, I don't know how long I was gone for. Was that 30 seconds?" All right, back to the breath. And you feel the inhalation for a few seconds, and then you're gonna be gone again with another thought about another thing.
That's where really most people, I think, get stuck. They start to meditate, they start to breathe, they start to have the breath into the nose and out through the mouth. And then that first thought comes in and they feel like, okay, I failed. I'm supposed to be thoughtless. I'm supposed to just be thinking about my breath or just be thinking about nothing at all. And basically be supposed to be like floating in space like some sort of Jedi or monk. And immediately when a thought comes in, I fucking failed. That's not it at all. And Sam Harris is explaining that, right? The thoughts are going to come in. That's part of the meditation. Part of the practice is learning to let them go and let them travel. Like I said, like the snow globe. Yeah, your whole brain is being shaken up. And so how can you just let the little flakes fall to the bottom, just like you're letting the thoughts come and go. I mean, I do a meditation on my podcast every single month, and talking through a meditation, using my meditation voice, which is kind of different than my normal voice, helps you like feel and see. And like that'll be released tomorrow on my podcast on January 11th. If you're interested in that, especially if you're watching this right now and interested in what Sam Harris has to say about meditation, but the thoughts will come. That's where the whole idea of non-judgment, the weird thought will come. A strange thought will come. The thought you've had a million times will keep coming again. But how can you sit with yourself and with the breath as powerfully as possible and just let it fade? Now, again, you don't have to meditate cross-legged, in a dark room on a cushion for 65 minutes every day to be Zen, right? There are tons of times where you can practically apply your meditation in the shower. Wash your body, get some hygiene in, then maybe sit under the shower, think about some stuff, be calm for a moment, try to let everything just fade away from you. Or when you're walking, right? Again, there are certain places we don't want to close our eyes when we're doing our meditation, but in nature, you're feeling the vibes, the trees, the sounds, right? You're letting that sort of calm you down and get you back in the present moment. You're feeling each step as you walk, right? Whatever the case may be. Or we are sitting down in a quiet room, thinking about our breath, utilizing the breath as the life force and as the best friend. There are many different ways to meditate. And the whole point of it is non-judgment. If the first thing you do to meditate in your way, however you feel is best for you, is the judgment part, that's what you need to work on, right? That's where you need to sort of figure out why that's happening. Why am I immediately judging myself for trying to do a thing that I know is going to make me better? Or whatever the case may be. More present is actually the goal. And so that's how I think about it. Let's continue with Sam Harris.
Born away, right? Now,
can you please just hear me out? No, all work management platforms are the same. They take forever to learn, and in the end,
skip.
Oh, this seems normal to most people. It is totally pathological, right? The fact that we think this is compatible with human sanity and and basic well-being is just because it's happening to everybody. I mean, there's some people who claim not to have any inner voice or inner thoughts, and we could talk about those separately. But for most people, if they try to pay attention to anything, I mean, the breath is just a useful object because it's there. They will find that it's hard to do, and it's hard to do because their attention on it is endlessly being submerged by this automatic product of discursivity, right? It's mostly linguistic, but for lots of people, it can be images too, or both, and it is a kind of light dream, right? Now, once you get some degree of concentration, and the reason why you use the breath in the beginning is just an object upon which you can build kind of a modicum of concentration so that you can notice the difference clearly between being lost in thought and being able to pay attention to an arbitrary object. And you can notice it so clearly. You kind of build.
I did miss something that Sam Harris said earlier that now is just coming back to me when he resaid the word pay attention, right? We are with ourselves every single day. We're with our thoughts, we're with our actions, we're with ourselves every single day. And so the only way to get to know someone is to pay attention to them, is to be with them, is to learn them, right? The only way I got to know my wife and still doing this every single day is to spend time with her, to ask her questions, to spend time, quality time, uninterrupted, thinking about her past or present, how she became to be, like who she is, the value she represents. That's the same thing we want to do with ourselves, right? I recently released an episode on my podcast about goals. And targets and the direction we're going to go in and how do we achieve the things we set out to achieve in 2026. And one of the most important things is clarity, is understanding what you really want. And that starts with understanding who you really are, which is truly understanding what your core values are. and what your first principles are and what your identity is. And that leads to understanding what you really want. And that leads to direction you're headed in, which might lead to the actual target or goals that you really are intrinsically motivated by, instead of doing random shit that you think society wants you to do, or whatever the case may be. And so it does start with paying attention to oneself, to understand oneself, to get to know oneself, to ask yourself these important questions so that you can aim at the right things in your life. And I talk extensively about that on my most recent podcast episode, which can be found on every platform and can be found Spotify or Apple. Just search Something for Everybody on all major podcast platforms. Or text me at my number, which is 201-534-3681, and I will directly send you that link via text. But here we go, back to Sam Harris.
Hold this muscle enough so that you can actually pay attention for longer periods of time at will, and the thoughts either don't arise, or when they arise, you notice them as further appearances in consciousness, and you can actually notice them without being carried away by them, right? So the thought still arises. The thought of the conversation you're about to have with your girlfriend still comes up, but you're not identifying.
That's important. That's important. Sorry, I guess I'm pausing a lot, but not sorry. That's the whole point. You're noticing them without getting carried away by them. Before you start meditating, and when you initially start meditating, you're going to get carried away by those thoughts because you're unfamiliar with them. You think meditation is about having no thoughts and being perfectly zen. But then as you get better at this meditation process, you understand that you will notice them. But like Sam just said, really important, you're not getting carried away by them. So you have an upcoming conversation with this person, or you didn't like the way you talked to that person, or that interaction went weird. And so you're having that thought again and again and again, and you're just letting it go. You're not letting it carry you away. You're not letting it drag you out of the meditation, but you still know it's there. And I think that is an important piece of learning to meditate, or learning to utilize our breath in an intentional way. Here we go. Back to saying
identified with it. You actually, you're witnessing it as an appearance in consciousness in the same way that you're witnessing the sound of my voice as an appearance in consciousness.
I was just thinking about that, how the way you're describing this. I have heard you talk about this before, and the idea of these things just appearing in your consciousness. And I suddenly realized that I can think of your words right now as that, in a way, without trying to open up the free will question. My own words, they just sort of appear and come out of nowhere. And I guess nothing's really changed except noticing that. And it's weird. It feels like you are sort of taking a step back from it all, and observing these things.
The difference between my
experiencing
voice
them.
and your voice is that you're identified, or you tend to be identified with your voice. It feels like a self. It feels like I, and yet that is on a subtle level. That's what it's like to be thinking without noticing the present thought arise as an object in consciousness.
Wow.
And what meditation allows you to do, and again, this is all just a matter of paying attention. You don't have to believe anything. You don't have to take my word for any of this, right? You just have to pay closer and closer attention. And many people bounce off this whole project because it's hard to do. Like in the beginning, it's hard.
What up? What up, Jesse Sims 7141? What up? Thanks for joining the stream. Cheers, mate.
To do, right? Like you just find, fuck, this just doesn't work. I tried meditating, didn't work for me. Right. That is so, but most people in the beginning they close their eyes and they're essentially they think they're meditating, but they're just thinking with their eyes closed, just thinking. And occasionally they feel the breath for a second, but
that's funny. They think they're meditating, but they're actually just thinking with their eyes closed. Yeah, that's why like sort of the paramount sort of ideal for meditation is you're focusing on something. Let it be your breath, like Sam Harris said, because it's always there. It could be something else. You could be focusing on something else, but let it be your breath because it's always there. But you're not just thinking like you normally do with your eyes closed, right? You're paying attention to the breath to try and remove the idea that you're always focusing on your thoughts. But when the thoughts come, you're allowing them to pass and not getting carried away by them, but you're focusing on the breathing into the nose, the end of the diaphragm, the feeling it in your belly, the expansion of your belly, the feeling it holding at the top, and then pushing everything out through the mouth. You're focusing on that. That is the focus. You're not just thinking with your eyes closed, which is a good distinction. You're actually participating in the meditation. It's an active practice of you paying attention to you through your breath. So let's continue.
They're just thinking like, what good is the breath, and what's the point of this, and how long do I have to do this, and they never break the spell of identification with thought. If you persist long enough to get some perspective on thought itself as just an appearance in consciousness, you can begin to feel that consciousness itself.
Pause.
This prior
interesting question in the chat here. Let's see. Do you ever wish an atheist like Sam Harris could ever debate a theist like Jay Dyer? Sure. I think that would be a very interesting conversation. I don't know if Sam Harris has ever debated people who believe in religion. I have no idea. I know he's debated Dr. Jordan Peterson quite a few times, but seemed like that was before Dr. Jordan Peterson got super into God and religion. Also, hopefully, best wishes to Dr. Jordan Peterson. We will be reacting to a video of his after this Sam Harris one. But of course, I think that would be a completely riveting conversation if we got to see that type of thing.
Subjectively, in which thought and perception and emotion and everything else you can notice about your experience is appearing, it doesn't feel like I, right? Because the feeling that you're intuiting as I, the feeling of being a subject in the middle of your experience, that's not identical to experience. It's actually just on the edge of experience or in the center of it. That's somehow appropriating experience. There's the kind of the unchanging center of gravity in the midst of whatever the experience, right? That sense is itself another experience. It's part of experience, right?
Yeah.
That little wrinkle of me is something that consciousness itself has a perspective on, and that it doesn't feel like me, right? It feels impersonal. It does not feel like a subject is shining its light of consciousness on the various other objects of experience. And so meditation ultimately is nothing more than the task of paying close enough attention to what consciousness is like moment to moment. Breaking the spell of thought the moment you notice you're lost in thought, coming back to noticing. It's not blocking thoughts. Thoughts are not a problem. They just are a problem in the beginning. But ultimately, it's not a matter of getting rid of thought or having less thought or having different thoughts. It's just having a perspective on thought, which is the point of view of.
Let's see some chat. A biologist debated genealogy, skeptic. Okay, great. Let's see. In the 2010s, Sam was one of the four horsemen doing the new atheist circuit, mostly debating Christians, but a few imams and rabbi. Yeah, I think I've seen some of that stuff for sure. I love mostly Sam Harris for his conversations on meditation, how to live a better life, mental health, mindset, things of that nature. But I know he obviously has written extensive books on atheism and religion and things of that nature. I find the four horsemen such as Dawkins on Deepak Chopra to be quite entertaining. Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right, let's jump back in.
This prior condition in which this mere cognizance in which thought and sound and sensation are arising. And it does connect with the free will conversation, because from my point of view,
did miss an important piece that I think I've mentioned there a couple times, but it's like when you do meditate, the goal is not to eliminate the thoughts coming in your head. The thoughts aren't the problem. Your attachment to the thoughts are the problem. And so again, when you sit down to maybe meditate for the first time, do not assume that you're going to eliminate all the thoughts coming in your brain and you're going to be like floating, meditating Zen Jedi master who never has any thoughts. Again, the thoughts are not the problem. The way you get hooked on and attached to the thoughts are the problem. And the way we try and unhook ourselves or unburden ourselves or not get carried away by those thoughts is by paying attention to something else, which could be our breath. And that's the whole idea. So we're paying attention to our breath, into the nose, out through the mouth, into the diaphragm, breathing deeply, paying attention to that instead of always paying attention to our thoughts, which we get hooked on, but now we're just letting them come and go and not actually getting attached to them and not getting carried away by them. And now we're paying attention actually to who we are and who we could be through our breath. And that's really, at least how I see it. Now, Sam Harris and the guy interviewing him, Alex, are much smarter than I am. So that's just how my brain sees what Sam Harris is saying. do you time your thoughts when you swing in baseball, golf? That's a very interesting question and an awesome question. Um, there should be a proper routine for a golf or baseball swing. Every great athlete utilizes their breath in their specific routine and process. So for me, as a baseball player, if I'm about to take an at bat, my right foot is in the batter's box, which means my left foot is out of the batter's box, and that's where I'm taking my deep breath. So I'm looking at the speck of the bat. I'm taking a deep breath so I can drill my focus into that specific moment. Then I'm stepping fully into the batter's box and getting my hands ready to go. So my attention is fully on where I need it to be. And golf is the same way. And now if I'm in on defense, like the pre-pitch routine is going to be huge. And that pre-pitch routine ends with a breath and some self-talk. And so you utilize meditation and visualization to hone in your breath and hone in your process so that you can apply it in the game. And so that's where I use breathing as a way to time my self-talk so that I'm exactly ready for the next pitch or next player, next moment. And so meditation is also a powerful practice in that regard for handling quote unquote nerves or pressure or stress or anything like that. So you can meditate better while breathing in marijuana smoke or not? I don't think so. I don't recommend it, but man, people can do whatever they want. Not giving advice, just sharing my opinion on certain things. So, but thanks for the questions. Let's get back to Sam. We got like 3 minutes left in this video, and then
it's completely
we'll move on to the Dr. Jordan Peterson one.
Unravels the apparent mystery of free will, because people think that the mystery is we know we have it because we feel it very deeply. And, subjectively, it's a truth about us, yet objectively, it's hard to map onto the causality of things. But if you pay close enough attention to what it's like to be you, that is, i.e., meditate, you can notice that it's not even a subjective truth about you because everything just arises. The next thought just arises. The next intention just arises. That the intention that counters that intention, that stops you from doing the thing you intended a moment ago, that just arises. The willpower arises and it wanes. The thought, oh my God, I need more willpower, that arises and it's effective or not based on some mysterious principle that you can't inspect. It's all just springing into view out of this condition that is intrinsically mysterious, which you are identical to. It's not that you have it, you're not on the edge of it, you're not using it. Subjectively speaking, experientially speaking, there's just experience and you're identical to it.
The news that we read every day is filled with moral judgments. News outlets make decisions about what stories to cover, and this impacts what issues we focus on. One way for us as, and this is exactly the biggest problem, context on the judgments, algorithmically curated perspectives that to show readers stories that they might be missing.
No more. Don't need that. Get that out of there. All right. Okay. So that was the Sam Harris video on meditation. I mean, obviously there's much longer videos where Sam Harris describes like in depth, in detail, meditation practices. But I thought that sort of 14-minute video, I never watched it before, but I figured there'd be some short, impactful insights that probably we could share that we could use. And so again, if you're thinking about starting a meditation practice, this goes for sort of any change you want to make in regards to your whole life. So let's just use meditation as the example. Like you want to start a meditation practice. So you want to build that as a habit into your life. You have to make that habit too small to fail. So don't start with, I want to meditate 30 minutes a day for 3 times a week. Start with, I want to take one deep breath, 1 time per week, and then build from there. And again, when you meditate, when you sit down to pay attention to yourself with your breath, you are not trying to remove the thoughts. The thoughts aren't the problem. You are trying to unhook yourself from the thoughts. That's really the most important thing. And so, again, like I stated earlier in the stream, you can also utilize if this, then what statements. So if you walk through a door, then you take a deep breath. If you go to the bathroom, then you take a deep breath. It just gives you more stitching of the present moment throughout the day, because most of the time we're thinking about the past or the future or this or that, and we're not truly here right now. And the only way to do that is through our breath. And so every time you walk through a door, you're like, be here right now. It just gives you more and more practice to be able to focus on your breath and how to utilize it when you need it most. when you're feeling anxious or nervous, or, when you're going into a big presentation, or about to walk into your home, or whatever the case may be. We're just getting reps and time under tension with our breath, as Sam Harris is talking about. So we're not totally carried away by every thought we have all the time, but we're using our breath to sort of unhook ourselves. And so, yeah, that's what I think. Loved it. And also, paying attention to yourself is really important, because it gives you clarity on who you are and who you want to be, and sets you up to go towards the right targets in your life, which, again, I did a whole podcast episode on goal setting 101, really a goal setting masterclass. Just released most recent episode of my podcast, which is called Something for Everybody. You can check it out on every major podcast platform, or YouTube, or X, or wherever you listen to your podcast. So please do check that out. Now, let's see, what were these? It's legal now. Didn't Trump officially legalize it, though, as medical aid to meditation? I have no idea. Don't know anything about that. But if true, I guess cool for people who need it and want to use it to meditate and get locked into the present moment. Is self-reflection technically anti-meditation? I don't think so. I don't really put the word self-reflection in front of reflection. I think just reflection is the idea of learning from our experiences. I did a whole podcast episode, again, on reflecting on our 2025 experiences. And we don't just grow from experience. We grow from reflection plus experience equals growth. And so I think part of reflecting is thinking deeply about what happened to us. And that could be a form of meditation, right? The wins, the losses, the setbacks, the challenges, the energy givers, the energy drainers, all of these things are us reflecting. And so that we can be better understanding ourselves in the future, so we don't make the same mistakes twice. And so that's how I think about it. But let's jump into the next video. Yeah, but meditation, let's see. Yeah, but meditating is so you can tell someone else to build your false self up, right? I'm not really sure what that means, but no, I don't think so. Anyways, let's see. Jordan Peterson. Here we go. Bang. All right.
How about this gentleman second from? Yes. John's got the mic there.
Thank you. I don't want to look behind me. How many?
Also, this video apparently does have a little bit of static, so sorry about that, but we'll get through it. So here we go.
You people are here because I'll get a bit nervous to ask this question. Also, this may not apply to many, so I expect your answer might be a bit short. I'm a vet and currently serving police officer in WA, and I've got PTSD, and I'm at the Marion Centre, which is a mental place. And, they let me out today.
Oh, yeah.
Legally. I just wanted to ask you, how do I move from day-to-day hedonism and ideations and risk the hope and cautious optimism of a long-term life with the conditions I currently have, or for anybody who might be having complex PTSD and living day-to-day?
Well, I mentioned this program that I have online, this self-authoring program. One thing you might try doing it. So one of the so it's got 3 parts.
No.
Imagine your best employee is stuck doing admin tasks, paperwork, answering phones from.
The first part is a guided.
Before we jump into that, though, like, as I mentioned, my podcast is really centered around mindset, mental health, and personal development. And I've done a ton of episodes on, misconceptions around suicide and mental health, misconceptions around depression, and all these types of things. Just to be very frank, for those new to my channel or my stream, in 2018, I lost my big sister Rachel to suicide, and that sort of, put me on a journey to try and understand everything humanly possible about mindset, mental health, and personal development. That's why I stumbled upon some of these teachers of Sam Harris and meditation, and Dr. Jordan Peterson about, all the stuff he's talked about and went through himself. And so this is supposed to be a message of hope. That's the title of the YouTube channel. Hopefully it's not just clickbait. But if you're in the trenches right now, I do promise that it can get better. I do promise that we can overcome, that we can keep moving forward. Yes, it might be hard. Yes, you might feel like you're in a mountain of despair and nothing can get better and nothing's going right. But we can take little tiny baby steps forward that might eventually improve our lives. And if we can take responsibility for that, I think that's deeply powerful and deeply important. And again, I've shared extensively on my podcast the story of my sister and what she went through and how it shaped me and what it feels to be a suicide loss survivor, and also what it feels like to go through serious bouts of depression where you feel like you're just living in fucking hell. And I know Dr. Jordan Peterson has experienced that personally. I've seen someone go through that. But there is something to be said about overcoming it, pulling yourself out of that darkness through whatever mental health tools and proactive research or proactive tools or prevention stuff we said is like really important. Yeah, I don't know. That didn't sound very sort of what's the right word? Sort of very concise, but that's just was on my mind and on my heart. So that's what I said. Um, and someone said, "So sorry for your loss, Aaron." Thank you very much. Yeah, my sister's memory is a major blessing. So thank you. Here we go. Now let's see what Dr. Jordan Peterson has to say.
Autobiography. And what it asks you to do is break your life down into 7 epochs and 7 stages. Sometimes people do that by relationship or by year or by occupation, however you choose. And then to detail out the most significant emotional events of your life, especially those that still hold some emotional valence. And that would help, because what happens with PTSD in some sense is that the narrative through which you see the world fractures. And because it fractures, your perceptions and your consequent emotional responses become chaotic. And that chaos produces a stress response, a chronic stress response. And so what you need to do to recover from PTSD is to knit the story back.
I'm sorry to hear that about your sister. Glad you were using that experience to try and help people. Doing my best, man. It's really the only way I knew how to, you know, prevent myself from going into my own darkness was to try and be of service to other people. And now I'm a husband and a father. So that gives me enough responsibility and purpose for the rest of my life. But yeah, my only goal now is to try and leave the world a little bit better than I found it. So hopefully that happens. Here we go. Back to Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Together. And I had a client who had PTSD, very seriously affected. She was only 17, and she was so fractured that she was diagnosed with severe schizophrenia. And when I first saw her, she could barely talk, and she could barely focus her eyes, and she would move her hands up and down, and I could, like she was grasping for something. And I asked her why, and she said that she could see lines in front of her and that she was trying to interact with them. I mean, when your perceptions are fractured, you're in pretty rough shape.
Let me share something on that. Towards the end of my sister's life, she did develop schizophrenia. And after my sister died, I went to a bunch of classes to try and kind of figure out what schizophrenia was and maybe what it felt like to deal with it. So imagine this right now. Imagine you're in a coffee shop and you're just having a nice one-on-one conversation with a friend, and they're talking, you're talking, and then imagine 2 people right beside of you. They've sort of curled up pieces of paper and they've stuck those pieces of paper to your ear. And on the other side, they're just talking gibberish the whole time, saying nonsense in this year, nonsense in this year. And it's going on nonstop the whole time while you're trying to have this conversation with the person you're actually in real life with. That's what it can feel like to have schizophrenia. And it can be obviously extremely fucking overwhelming and painful. And most of the time you don't know what to do because you just want the thing to stop. You want the voices to stop, like all this other stuff to stop. And, you know, my sister worked for Raytheon at the time of her passing. And, you know, she thought the government was outside of her house and all this type of stuff and yada, yada, and they were watching her and yada, 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 yada. And so the important part of what I'm saying is that's what it might feel like to have schizophrenia if you're completely unaware of what that might feel like and how challenging and debilitating that mental illness might be and could be for someone just trying to live in the world. And so let's see what else Dr. Jordan Peterson has to say about it.
And it turned out that she had been terribly bullied by a boy whose amorous advances she had rejected, and he set out to make her life hell and certainly succeeded. And I had her walk through this past authoring program in the course of therapy. And she could hardly write to begin with. And we went through her life right from the beginning. And as we went through it, she got more and more coherent. And by the time we had brought her up to date, including walking through this catastrophic bout of bullying and the school's absolute inability to do anything about it, she had glued herself back together. So the other thing I would carefully recommend, especially if what traumatized you happened more than...
I mean, it kind of, to make a sort of comparison between what Sam Harris was saying and what Dr. Jordan Peterson is saying. Sam Harris is like, we want to pay attention to ourselves because we want to know ourselves. That's essentially what Dr. Jordan Peterson is saying. We want to understand ourselves, whether that be our past, what we're going through, so we can change and shape the narrative so that we can have a better future. And again, I mentioned this about the goal setting masterclass that I did on my podcast, which is called Something for Everybody. And one of the most important questions, again, stated, like I said earlier, that you can think about for goal, or as I like to say, target setting, is clarity. And the only way you can have clarity is to understand what you really want. And to understand what you really want, you have to reflect and journal about who you really are and what you've actually been through. And so all of these things sort of go hand in hand, and it takes a meditation, it takes a journaling and a reflective process, it takes the right questions. Then you have all that information to compile so that you can actually figure out what you really want, how you can get there, and the direction you're headed in, and sort of the daily actions and daily steps is going to get there. But of course, there's obviously more complicated experiences. If you have PTSD or severe depression or schizophrenia, there's going to be a few more complications and a few more things you might need to work out with potentially a professional like Dr. Jordan Peterson is saying. But some of the sort of the more basic protocols can be applied to everyone's life, sort of no matter what you might be dealing with. Here we go.
18 months ago is that you spend some time either writing about it, or another thing to try is just before you go to sleep, bring the memory to mind, and not enough to push you farther than you want to go, but as vividly as you can, and then let it go. Like, don't push yourself harder than you can.
My name is Jay Prang, 55 years old, from Atlanta, Georgia. I think as you get older, you do tend to...
See, you want to initiate a process of active engagement with the dragon that burned you, fundamentally. The psychophysiological pattern of active...
He said you want to have active engagement with the dragon that burned you. And a more sort of simpler level, on an everyday level, let's say, we're sort of talking about the most severe cases with Dr. Jordan Peterson right here, but let's say on an everyday level, the same thing can be applied. Like, the growth you seek is in the work you're avoiding, right? Active engagement with the dragon that burned you is essentially saying the growth you seek is in the work you avoid, or the growth you seek with your partners in the conversation you're not having. However you want to sort of spin that to apply to your life. That's what Dr. Jordan Peterson is saying here, right on the most severe case. But if we simplify it down to our life every day, as we're trying to move forward to become the best version of ourselves, this may what it look like, right? The growth you seek is in the work you are potentially avoiding. You have to figure out why you're avoiding that work. What's holding you back from it? Is it fear? Is it insecurity? Is it all the above? Is it procrastination? Is it a perfectionism? Is it whatever it is? You have to figure that out. Again, that's comes with paying attention to oneself, reflecting on oneself, and understanding who we are, so we can figure out what is actually pushing us away from the growth we seek, and then how we sort of manage that, reverse that protocol, and attack the things that are most important to us.
Engagement is the opposite to the psychophysiological pattern of involuntary stress. And so if you can practice embodying that voluntary confrontation, then that stance can come to dominate. And that's the stance you want to dominate, because that moves you forward voluntarily into the world. And so, and that, in all probability, that will work. So I had another, this is a friend of mine, he had PTSD, and he had been brutalized in a Canadian residential school when he was a kid, and it was bloody rough, like Auschwitz level rough. It was really bad. You can't listen to his story.
I mean, one of the things that Dr. Jordan Peterson says all the time, over and over again, in every single one of his conversations, is the adoption of voluntary responsibility. Like, if someone forces you to do something, that's not voluntary responsibility. But if you say, I'm going to take this on as a voluntary hardship to make myself better, that's a voluntary responsibility that you're holding on to, that you're grasping. He talks about that with fatherhood and all these types of things. And I learned a lot about that from him before I became a father. And you want to adopt the most responsibility you can possibly bear so that you can blossom into that best version of you and truly understand what you're actually capable of, which is like immense and powerful. But you have to adopt that voluntary responsibility by, taking on the David Goggins approach of chosen and unchosen suffering, or the Jocko Willink approach of, doing hard things, or whatever teacher you want to apply it to. It's all basically the same.
Story without it like breaking down, it's bad. And he told me that he hadn't looked in a mirror for 40 years.
Holy shit.
He was unable to face himself.
Wow.
And he also told me that when he dreamed, he was still 8 years old in his dreams, same age he was when the cataclysm occurred.
Wow.
And that he had started to become aware that he was stuck in his dream. He's kind of a visionary guy. He's an artist, this guy. And so I suggested that he spend a little bit of time in front of the mirror each night before he went to bed, just taking a glance at himself. Because he had not looked at himself for so long, he didn't even know how old he was. Because so what happened in his dreams, this was so cool, he started to age in his dreams.
Also, Dr. Jordan Peterson mentions this all the time, about like the first step you have to take in doing anything, in looking at yourself in the mirror, in cleaning your room, or whatever the task is like that first step is quote unquote going to be embarrassingly small. But who gives a fuck? It's your first step. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Sam Harris and meditation, about making that habit too small to fail. It's the same idea here. You have to small it down, shrink it down as small as possible, so it might even seem embarrassing. So most people won't take that first step because they think it's so embarrassing, when really it's the only step that they can take. And if they actually incrementally move forward over time, it's going to be fucking amazing. That's why, Jordan Peterson talks about when it's cleaning your room, your whole fucking room is a mess, right? It's sort of an analogy to your life. But the most embarrassingly small step you can take is to put one sock away. Once you do that, you put another one the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and it builds and builds and builds and builds. And instead of thinking I can have a clean room by the end of the week, why not think I can have a clean room by the end of the year? And that's how you actually have to begin attacking these types of things. So if it's really hard for you to face yourself in the mirror, okay, what's the most smallest step you can possibly take that's too small to fail, that is going to get you there, so that when 12 months, you can actually face yourself in the mirror. You can be honest with yourself. You can look at yourself and say, this is good about me. This is bad about me. This is what I want to change. This is what I love. And let's keep moving forward with that direction. And so we have to apply those types of principles if we're actually wanting to change our life. And so again, it might seem embarrassingly small, but it's not, right? You have to accept reality. You can't fight against reality. If this is the actual reality of the situation, that you need to put one sock away, or you got to look at a picture of a mirror before you can actually look at a mirror, right? Whatever it is, right? That's your vibe. Let's do that. And let's have a longer term vision of ourselves. Tony Robbins always says, right? We overestimate what we can do in 1 year, and we underestimate what we can do in 5. Okay, let's have that longer term vision. We can fucking do it. Let's go.
So instead of being stuck at 8, then he was 10, and then he was 12. And eventually, he did this for a number of months. Eventually, he got as old in his dreams as he was in real life. And what that meant, like imagine your dream image it's the representation of yourself in imagination. And if it's stuck 50 years in the past, then your self-concept is in some sense hasn't been updated for that period of time. Just that process of voluntary engagement, which was him being willing to look at himself in the mirror, despite his shame, his deep shame at what had happened to him, that was enough to pull him back together. So that should work. That should work, you know. The other thing with PTSD, it's also very useful to develop something approximating a sophisticated philosophy of good and evil, because people generally have PTSD because they've been struck by something malevolent. And so it's not just tragedy, there's malevolence in it. Reading, there's a couple of books I'd recommend. One is called Ordinary Men. It's about a police battalion in Germany who was trained to do heinous things in World War II. It's a great book, Ordinary Men. It's a great book. And another one I would recommend is called The Rape of Nanking. And these are rough books, man. The woman who wrote The Rape of Nanking, she committed suicide. It's a rough book. But the utility of the books is that they universalize malevolence. So almost everybody who's traumatized has been either touched by their own malevolence or by witnessing it or being subject to it at the hands of someone else. And one of the consequences of that is that if you don't have an advanced philosophy of good and evil, you have no place to put the contact with malevolence. Part of the utility of the doctrine of original sin was the universalization of malevolence. So, you know, you might say, and it's true that there's a little bit of Hitler in all of us, and there's a little more than a little bit, you can be sure of that. And that's a pretty cataclysmic realization. And you might say, well, how could...
Well, yeah, it's like every single person on earth is capable of evil, right? Because all of the evil of the world has been, committed by human beings, and we're all human beings. So we all have the capacity for good and evil, but we also have the agency to choose an ethical and moral life, to choose the light. And so, all the time you see Dr. Jordan Peterson like crying on camera and crying in interviews, and people think it's weird and lame. But I've come to the conclusion that it's because Dr. Jordan Peterson has studied these atrocities that humans have committed so extensively that he just thinks about all of those experiences, like they just come flooding and rushing to his brain every time he speaks. And so he gets so emotional about whether he's talking about his health or his daughter or his wife, or just being asked the question, how are you? Every single memory of every person he's studied who's done horrible things or has talked to, has PTSD or can barely write and move and talk, and who he's worked personally with, all of those emotions come flooding to him, and he just doesn't know what to do with them at certain points because he's seen and studied so much suffering. And he knows that humans have the capacity for that evil, but he also knows that we also have the voluntary responsibility to adopt goodness, to adopt the light, to live a moral and ethical light. So he knows both sides of it, and really is trying to lean people towards, like, we have the capacity for evil, of course, but we also have the strong inclination for goodness, and that's really fucking powerful. At least that's how I take it and see it. But I think there's just another minute left in this video, so we'll see.
You bear that self-understanding or the revelation of that kind of malevolence in the world, and the answer is, in part, by understanding it as part of the eternal conditions of existence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the idea that the state, the sovereign of the state has an evil uncle, that's an idea as old as time. So for the Egyptians, that was Set. And the sun sets, by the way, because the spirit of Set is what devours the sun at night. And Set is the root word for Satan. And so even the ancient Egyptians knew that malevolence that it was worthwhile contemplating the existence of malevolence as an independent spirit. And that allows you to take responsibility in some sense for the existence of malevolence in your own life, but it also universalizes it so that it's not exactly about you, right? It's more a reflection of the structure of existence as such. And that can allow you to detach yourself from it a little bit. And that can be extremely useful too.
Sweet.
What if you could clean your retainer?
No, don't need that. Get out of there. Thank you. Sweet. Thank you, Dr. Jordan Peterson. There hasn't been any super recent updates from his daughter, Michaela, about his health, but, all prayers and best wishes go to Dr. Jordan Peterson as he recovers or heals from whatever he's going through. And so there's another theme there at the end. It's like understanding also the part that you play in your own suffering. And again, that's trying to pay attention to yourself. What habits are you excusing? What behaviors are you excusing that you wouldn't excuse in someone else, but you're excusing in yourself? And so I've come up with like this 3-step approach that might help you identify the things that you're not accepting that you need to accept in order to change. And so it becomes awareness, acceptance, and action. So awareness, you got to become aware. You got to recognize what needs to change or what you want to change. And then step number 2 is full acceptance of that. You can't fight against reality, right? We talked about something that's embarrassingly small. Well, you have to accept that. You have to accept that this is your starting point, or this is your life, or this is where you're at, or this is the thing you need to do. You have to fully accept that. So you're aware of it. You fully accept it. Like, this is my starting point. I don't give a fuck how small or how embarrassing or whatever the case may be. This is my starting point. And then we move into action. What can you do? Reflect, journal, meditate, right? The foundations of our mental health or our physical health or just our health in general are going to be eating well, moving well, sleeping well, and thinking well. So start there. What do you want to start doing? Stop doing, continue doing, right? Asking yourselves these questions so you can pay attention to yourself more, so you can understand yourself a little bit better, so you know the direction you want to head in. Like, all of these things can be done through, time, effort, action, but there are protocols and habits and systems and structures that you can develop that'll allow you to become the best version of you. And the world needs that. The world needs everything that you have to offer. The world needs your very best. It needs also your mistakes and your setbacks and your challenges, and it needs how you overcome them, right? This is a whole beautiful thing about being a person in this world that I think is so cool, that we all can experience this sort of together. But anyways, thanks for tuning into the stream. Loved it. We just went over a little over an hour here on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. So hopefully you have great plans to hang out with friends and family or do something that you love to do on this day. I appreciate you very much. We watched the Sam Harris video. We watched the Dr. Jordan Peterson video. So wherever you're watching or engaging with this video, please subscribe or follow there. And then if you like what I had to say, you'll definitely like my podcast, which is called Something for Everybody. It's on all major podcast platforms. And I appreciate you. I go live a bunch of times throughout the week, whether through sports, mindset, or professional wrestling. But the majority of my conversations surround mindset and mental health, especially my podcast. And so I appreciate you very much. And have a great rest of your day. And I will see you